We're here today with Mr. Lenny Whalen from the Gallatin County High School. Mr. Whalen, tell the people of the county what your job title is and what you do.
I'm the Deputy Superintendent and Director of Pupil Personnel. I'm not the Director of Transportation, but Transportation, Buildings and Grounds, Director of Pupil Personnel, that deals with attendance and truancy. All those are kind of my umbrella that I deal with here in the school district.
So people from the Transportation Department would answer to you then, correct?
Yes. Well, generally it's through the Transportation Director originally, and then if it's something that's a bigger issue or something that needs some more, answers, things of that nature, then it comes to me.
The reason I asked for the interview, and I really appreciate you sitting down with me, is we get a lot at the video news. We've been getting a lot of emails, comments sent to us about things happening on school buses. Parents have been contacting us, things going on in the school system, and I wanted to sit down and ask and talk to you about the policies and see if we could clear some of it up.
Absolutely.
One incident was, I believe, last Thursday.
Okay.
Over a 15-year-old, and due to ages and things, we both know, I won't mention names.
Well, I can't speak about any specific incidents per se, Hargis, but I can speak in general terms. So if you want to talk in general terms about a policy or something like that, for confidentiality, I can't go into any specific events or anything, and you know that. But if you want to talk general terms, policies, how we handle things.
Let me give you a hypothetical here then.
Okay.
You had an older student bring a lighter onto a school bus.
Okay.
Is that against school policy?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It is against school policy.
If that child put the lighter to a younger child's head, would it?
That would be a problem. Absolutely.
What would the school do to address a situation like that?
Generally speaking, what would happen as soon as the complaint was, brought up, or there was the allegation that had happened, it would be investigated right away. Generally, the students on the bus are going to be the witnesses in that situation, just to validate that everything that allegedly happened did happen. Once that happened, the principal of the school would be responsible for dealing with that particular situation.
Would how long, hypothetically, if that happened, say on a bus route going home during the evening, how long would it be before they got back to you?
Well, generally speaking, it depends on the circumstance. If it's something that happens on a bus that goes home in the afternoon, the standard protocol is that the bus driver would write that up, do a written documentation of it, would turn that in to the principal either that afternoon or first thing that next morning. The interviews, all the witnesses, the driver would be contacted, try to figure out exactly what happened, access the bus video, see if that shows anything, and basically getting all the information from those different entities to address and dispense the discipline as necessary.
Okay, how long does it normally take?
It generally takes, if it happens at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, all that would take place very first thing that next morning, and sometime within that day right there, generally we've got it addressed.
Some of the comments we've been getting is, why is there so many complaints of bullying at the school system, and what is the school doing to address this problem?
We're just like any other school system. Bullying is a problem. We don't want it in our schools, just like nobody wants it in their schools. And we're doing everything we can when it comes forward. And we have had some issues recently where people have, made comments, posted things online, done a lot of different things that, are pretty serious and something that we've been looking at and trying to substantiate what's happened and try to deal with appropriately.
What is the school district's bullying policy?
The school district, I think I saw you with it. We basically put out a district code of conduct every year, and I think I saw you with a copy of that. But on the third page, I believe it is, it basically, lays out what bullying behavior is, and tries to put us in a situation to educate students what it is, so they're aware, and try to say, don't do these kind of things. And then if you go and you flip on back in that same policy, if you go on back, there's actually a discipline grid that talks about bullying, and you've got anything on there which would be, if it's something that's considered a minor infraction, it could go from a warning all the way up to, potentially court charges being filed and a number of things like that. On top of that, KRS 525.070, there's a specific law on the books here in the state of Kentucky that really helps us try to leverage some of these situations to where, if it is a serious allegation that we can prove, we have the ability to go file some charges and do some things like that. Now, each one of those circumstances is something that goes through the school, obviously. The principals and administration there have to evaluate the situation, have to investigate, find out all the different things that's going on, and then make a decision as to, where it falls as far as the code of conduct's concerned, and whether it reaches the level of court charges being filed.
Mr. Whalen, how do you combat a problem when you got not only students encouraging, but you get parents involved in encouraging the students? I mean, how do you combat that problem?
Well, that's a tough, that's a tough situation we're in. It'd be helpful if parents would help educate their kids. The information we try to send
when
out.
the parents are encouraging the children,
it makes it very tough. And the first thing that we do in any of these circumstances, when we find out that it may border on illegal activity, whether it's something that happens regarding potential weapons or anything, drugs, harassment, bullying that reaches the level of being illegal, we're in contact with our school resource officer trying to bring him into the loop to say, here's what we got going on, very concerned about this situation. If it rises above, what we consider just to be something that we can address on our code of conduct, we want to try to bring them in. And if it's something that is illegal, we're looking to potentially pursue that if that's what it means.
Gallatin County has always prided itself on leading the way, trying to be first toward education, educating our children.
Sure.
The upper management of the school system, central office, they're always big on, moving forward and being ahead of everybody else, staying ahead of the game. Why does Gallatin County not go to a zero tolerance policy?
Well, that's a good question, and it's one of those things that we constantly review our policies every year. And I appreciate, Hargis, the opportunity to talk about these things, because if anybody watching this is interested in helping, review policies and say, hey, I think this policy may be antiquated, or maybe we need to go to zero tolerance policy, or whatever the circumstance may be, there's site-based councils at the schools and also our board policy. I'd be more than willing to talk to anybody to try to revise any policies they think that's flawed. So as to answer that question, why are we not at a zero tolerance policy, I really can't answer that. It's something I've never really looked into, but it may be something that would be worthwhile to us.
Do you feel, what is your opinion on a zero tolerance?
Well, I think policies are only good if you can enforce them. If you have the ability to have some bite to whatever you're trying to accomplish. I think our current policies are okay. Really where our leverage is with the law. Our conduct policy addresses it and gives us a lot of leeway as far as being able to address it. But it's just a matter of if it's going to have enough bite and for us to be able to address those issues.
But Mr. Whalen, if you said our policy is good if we use the law, since when did the school system start having to use the court systems to enforce their codes and regulations? When I was in school, I got sent to principal office.
Sure.
I was getting paddled. They didn't call the law.
Absolutely.
I done something in school, they suspended me.
Yeah, I understand. And that's still an option, and we still use that. We still do all those things you're talking about. All that happens. But it goes back to what you just said a minute ago, when the parents are sometimes involved in that, there's not a lot of reinforcement at home to help substantiate what you're saying.
What if you had a zero tolerance policy, or if you all would start, say, for an example, this happens,
sure,
suspend them, put it back on the parents.
Sure. And we may be closing in on that. You know, we very well could be closing in.
And I mean, does that sound harsh? Yes, but guess what? The next child that they're going to stop and in my opinion, I mean, it's just my opinion.
And we've had some. I mean, we have been doing that some. I mean, there is some things going on like you're saying, but it's not per se zero tolerance. You know, in the policy manual, things like that.
Has anybody ever contacted from Frankfurt ever contacted the school over issues?
Generally, I'm not sure I understand what you're asking.
Has anybody from any of the departments that I guess would oversee bullying in school systems and things, has Gallatin County ever been contacted by any of them departments?
Not that I'm aware
People
of.
who's filed complaints?
Not that I'm aware of. You know, and bullying's not exclusive to Gallatin County. You know, it's one of those things we see in every bordering district around us, and you know, every school in the nation, and I believe.
I have a couple more questions on here for you.
Okay.
I'm kind of moving around here on them.
Okay.
Hey, I know John Akers.
Mm-hmm.
I know he's contacted Gallatin County Schools.
Sure. I know John well. Matter of fact, we've done a lot over the last couple of years with our Readiness and Emergency Management grant. I've gotten a lot of information from those guys.
And I believe he's contacted school prior on the incident of bullying in the school system.
Okay, I wasn't involved with that, but
You wasn't, and
Sure.
I mean, I will say it in your defense, you
Sure.
wasn't involved in that conversation.
Sure.
Does a child not have the right, let me rephrase this, hypothetically, and it shouldn't even be hypothetically. A parent sends their child, puts them on a school bus.
Sure.
They come to our school system.
Mm-hmm.
They get on a bus and they go back home.
Sure.
Should every child not be afforded the protection of a safe education?
Absolutely, that's our goal. Absolutely, that's our goal. And if we're not doing that, we want to figure out what we need to do to fix it. And you know, I'm not aware of any particular issue you're talking about, but anytime we get a complaint or something comes up, we try to go right out and find out what's going on and address it. And I'll add to that a little bit, Hargis, because I think, you know, the biggest problem and the biggest, I think, parental concern is that when somebody calls in with a complaint or, you know, they have a concern, we go and investigate and address it, and they want us to respond to them and say exactly what we found and what we did. And for confidentiality reasons, we can't give them that information. It looks like we're maybe not being vigilant or maybe being uncooperative, and maybe, you know, in their mind they feel like we're not giving them the information that we should. And I'll give you an example. Say that you call me and you had a third grade son on the bus and somebody was doing something to him, and you tell me you believe it's so and so, he told you. So right away we would start to investigate that, and if it was true what you were saying, you know, through our research, what you said was accurate, we would address that student based on our code of conduct, however it fell, looking at the student's record, you know, deal with him, whether it was anywhere from a warning to a bus suspension to a bus expulsion. If it got to that, we would do that. But I couldn't come back to you and say, Hargis, you know, through our research, we found all this, you know, we did this to the student. I just couldn't do that for confidentiality. I couldn't say anything that we did or we found on this other kid because I can't by law. And I think that's what a lot of parents look for, and we just don't have that ability because we can't legally.
Mr. Whalen, when, say, okay, we'll use hypotheticals again here since we're not allowed to.
I understand. We can talk general specifics.
Yes. Say students go out and set up a Facebook page.
Sure.
And teachers join that Facebook page.
Sure.
How do you address that problem?
Well, that is a personnel issue, you know, and there's policies and things in the professional standards of a teacher that would, you know, we would have to address on that. Really, I haven't had any issues that I'm aware of this year or in past years. Now, that may have fell somewhere else here, but to my knowledge, I've not dealt with anything like that, but that would be concerning, absolutely.
Because at that point in time, it would look like the people that's supposed to be representing the school system is encouraging this type of
Absolutely,
behavior.
absolutely, and that is inappropriate and something that we do not
So
want.
if you had a situation like that, how would you deal with it?
We would have to investigate it, see what was going on, and we would have to address it internally as a personnel issue, and go anywhere from reprimand to worst case scenario.
Do you feel like a lot of parents, when they call in, do you feel that maybe because it's their child, even though you're all investigating, do you think that they feel that you're all not getting it done fast enough for them?
I think that's always the case, and a little of a challenge for us is we transport 10,000 times a week. 1,000 in the morning and roughly 1,000 in the afternoon. You throw in, extracurriculars.
I know at least 12 of them's at
Yeah,
a certain time of day.
we know. I mean, we transport 10,000 kids a week. So we're not talking a couple hundred. I mean, we do quite a bit of transport, and I think most of the time it goes off without a hitch. But anytime something comes up, like we talked about a second ago, there's a lot of resources that goes in because we've got 4 different schools here on the campus. So if you've got a student who has a situation and you got to talk to the lower elementary principal, but it was actually a middle school kid that allegedly did whatever, then now we've got the elementary principal in contact with the middle school principal, and they're trying to coordinate and investigate both ends and talk to witnesses that may have been in that general area. So to answer your question, it takes us a little longer just because we got different entities we're trying to bring in and sort out really what happened, so we got factual information. We're trying not to have a knee-jerk reaction, to whatever the allegation is. And that's something we continue to try to speed up.
Generally speaking, say you had a teacher
Mhm.
and a student.
Okay.
You had teachers and things that would tell the students, that would argue with students and wrestle around with the students. And you probably know what I'm talking about here, and I'm not going to get specific because we can't.
Okay.
But a lot of students over here, this teacher's saying all the time, well, you meet me out on the tennis courts.
Sure.
How do you address, is that not invoking
Well,
violence?
no, I would say that's inappropriate for one. Definitely inappropriate and something that would need to be looked into. On the flip side of that, I know growing up I had teachers, especially in high school, that, there was some friendly kidding and, badgering that went on, just in good nature. So it's hard to say how that's, it's one thing to say, when you and I are in conversation, just rumbling around, let's go out on the tennis courts and we'll settle this. You and I both know that's a joke, but sometimes kids don't necessarily read that. So my stance on that to any teacher will be, be very careful because that's really inappropriate. It's good to be able to have the kind of relationships where you can have genuine conversations and rib each other and just make it fun in general.
You both know there's a fine line.
Yeah, absolutely. You want to make sure you don't cross that line, and if you are crossing the line, it's inappropriate, and they're doing something they shouldn't be.
Mr. Whalen, anything that you would like to say to the...
Absolutely. Harvey, I appreciate you giving us the opportunity. Anybody that's watching this, if you ever have any problems and you have concerns, please contact your children's principal. That is the person, either the principal or assistant principal. Call them if you have any issues or any concerns. They will get to the bottom of it. If it's transportation, now, a little bit of confusion that we commonly get, Hargis, is, something happens on the bus and the folks may try to call the bus garage. Technically, just because it happened on the bus, it's still a school-related issue, and the principal can investigate it better, going through the building and including the other principals that are involved. So my recommendation would be for anybody watching this that's interested, please call your principal, your child's principal. If they witness something or something's going on, call your child's principal, whether it's in the classroom, on the bus, where have you. Now, if it is something that they need to refer you to me or refer you to, transportation or whatever the case may be, they'll give you that information. But we want to work with you. We don't want unsafe activities going on our buses, in our schools. We don't want bullying. We don't want teachers saying inappropriate things or doing inappropriate things. We want to build relationship. We want parent support. We realize that, due to legal constraints, that we just can't divulge information that would really clarify stuff, but we can't do it legally, for student confidentiality.
That's why I like that, and I understand all that, and
Sure.
that's why I'm sitting here speaking with you in hypotheticals.
Sure.
Because there's some questions I'd just like to ask you straight out,
Sure.
but I can't.
Sure.
And me and you both know
Sure.
the reason I can't.
And if it was a situation where, your own kid's involved, and you call me with that, I can say, Hargis, I can only talk with you about, your son or whatever the case may be. But if there's other kids involved, I can't talk with you about what we found out about them in the investigation or how we handled them. And I know it would be aggravating to you to say, Hargis, we've investigated, I think we got the facts, and, we've addressed it. And I know that's aggravating to you. And trust me, if it wasn't for the legal perspective, I know it would be, a lot clearer to you if I said, this is what we found, that's what we found, and this is how we addressed it. But for those students on the other side, for legal reasons, I just can't do it. And it would really clarify a lot. And, just to add to that, there's stuff that's posted, on the internet and other things like you mentioned, and some of it's just not credible information. Some of it is partially credible, but there are other things that, we found in our investigation that it's not always credible. Portions of it may be, but, there might be a lot more to the story than what you read. That may be just one or two people's angle of what, they heard on their end. When we get all the investigation together, we can find out there's more to it. But to clarify it, we can't do it, just for confidentiality. You know what I mean?
Correct, and I understand.
It puts us in a tough spot, and really an uncomfortable spot, because I've got more information, factual information, that I'd really like to share just to clear the air, to say this is really what happened, and I can't do it because it's confidential for students, or if it's an employee, it's a personnel related issue
Correct.
that we've had to handle internally. And that puts us in a tough spot, because I don't want us to look like we're not open or we're, uncooperative, because we want to be, but we just get roadblocked with, confidentiality and laws on that side. So I appreciate it, buddy.
Well, I appreciate you sitting down and talking with us.
Absolutely.
You're the first one since the last interview that was sitting and talk with me.
Well,
I appreciate it.
Absolutely. I hope that clears it up. Like I said, any viewers that's watching this, we've got things in place to help address these issues. Sometimes they don't feel like we're as open and honest in their mind as we should be, but we just get blocked by some, legal ramifications that may help us clear the air at times.
Thank you, Mr. Whalen. I really appreciate it.
Hargis, appreciate it, buddy.